On draft night, everything looked perfect as Fernando Mendoza was selected with the first overall pick.
Thank you again.
But while it seemed like a smooth, celebratory moment, a new clip from that same night has just surfaced, and it's showing a very different side of what actually happened. The footage appears to capture a heated moment involving Fernando Mendoza, and it's already got people talking and starting to question his character. On Thursday, April 23, 2026, the NFL draft kicked off from Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The first round was complete, and up first was Fernando Mendoza, who, as expected, was taken first overall by the Raiders. There were no gasps in press rooms, no pundits scrambling to revise their mock drafts. The pick had been in for quite some time. It had been known that the Raiders were going to draft the Heisman Trophy winner with the first overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft since at least January 4th. But the moment Roger Goodell walked to the podium and said Mendoza's name, something happened that nobody anticipated. The 22-year-old quarterback's reaction to the pick looked different on ESPN than it did on NFL Network. Millions of people were watching the same event across two channels. Both NFL broadcast partners aired parallel coverage of the first round on their respective networks. After the Raiders entered their pick and announced Mendoza's name, both broadcasts went to a shot of Mendoza's living room to see the reaction from the Indiana quarterback. But while the videos looked the same, with Mendoza hugging his mother and greeting various family and friends, keen-eyed fans might have wondered about some peculiar differences. In the ESPN clip, Mendoza wears a Raiders hat shortly after hearing his name. The NFL Network version shows him without the hat during the initial celebration. The order of Mendoza's hugs with family members varied between the two broadcasts. Then there was one more detail that sharpened every suspicion. If you look super closely, although the clips look and sound identical, you can see Mendoza's phone in his hand in the NFL Network version while he is without it in the ESPN one. Hat on one channel, no hat on the other. Phone in one hand, empty hand in the other. Family members hugged in a different sequence, both clips airing at the same time. Some NFL fans were convinced that the camera crews had Mendoza and his family fake their reactions to the pick during a pre-recorded segment twice to air live on the two different broadcasts. Fans speculated about a possible retaping of the moment, invoking various conspiracies. The internet did what the internet does. Screenshots were taken. Side-by-side comparisons were posted. Timelines were dissected frame by frame. There is no doubt that it was suspicious. Why would there be more than one reaction to a live NFL draft moment? And the fact that Fernando Mendoza was nowhere near Pittsburgh that night made all of it even stranger. To understand why two cameras captured two different versions of the same celebration, you have to understand why Fernando Mendoza was sitting in a living room in South Florida, instead of standing on a stage in Pittsburgh. Fernando Mendoza's journey from overlooked two-star recruit to the top of the NFL draft is complete, after the Las Vegas Raiders took him with the first pick Thursday night. But Mendoza's path to that moment was anything but conventional. Once upon a time, Mendoza was ranked by 247 Sports as just the 134th best quarterback prospect in the class of 2022 and the 250th best player in Florida. Coming out of Miami Columbus High School, the 22-year-old, who was born in Boston but grew up in Miami, attended Christopher Columbus High School before initially committing to play football at Ivy League Yale. He subsequently changed his decision in order to play at California, where he spent 3 seasons before transferring to Indiana in December 2024. At Cal, Mendoza showed flashes but never emerged as a top-tier prospect. Mendoza wasn't even a prominent prospect at this time last year. The transfer to Indiana under head coach Curt Cignetti changed everything. In Bloomington, something clicked. Not gradually, not partially, but completely and overwhelmingly. He had a sensational season with the Hoosiers, completing 72% of his passes for 3,535 yards, 41 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. Mendoza led Indiana to a perfect 16-0 record and a national championship in 2025. During the 2025 season, Mendoza delivered a historic year for the Hoosiers, guiding them to their first conference championship since 1967 and securing the program's first national championship and undefeated season. The individual honors piled up in staggering fashion. He also became the first Heisman Trophy winner in school history. His Heisman campaign was accompanied by a number of other awards, including the Walter Camp Award, Maxwell Award, AP College Football Player of the Year, Davey O'Brien Award, Manning Award, and Big Ten Most Valuable Player. In the college football playoffs, he recorded an 8-touchdown interception ratio. And yet, The story that swirled most loudly around Mendoza heading into draft night wasn't about his arm or his accuracy. It was about a decision he made weeks before the draft, a decision that set the stage for the very controversy that would erupt on national television. Fernando Mendoza revealed that he won't be attending the events in Pittsburgh because he wants to be at home with his family, with whom he is famously close. The projected #1 overall pick in the NFL draft was not going to walk across the stage in Pittsburgh. He was not going to shake hands with Roger Goodell. He was not going to hold up a Raiders jersey in front of the cameras and the roaring crowd. Instead, he was going to sit in a living room in Coral Gables, Florida, surrounded by family members, mentors, coaches, and friends. Mendoza said the decision was ultimately family motivated. "My mom really wanted to do it at home. It's a lot easier for us, especially with the family situation," Mendoza said, also attributing the decision to travel ease. And the family situation he was referring to was deeply personal and deeply significant. Fernando Mendoza's mother, Elsa, is the emotional center of his story. She is, by every account, the reason her son plays the way he plays, leads the way he leads, and carries himself with a composure unusual for a 22-year-old athlete, about to become the face of a franchise. Mendoza's mother has multiple sclerosis and is wheelchair-bound, which is part of the reason he chose to stay home in Miami for his big moment. She shared that she was diagnosed with the disease about 18 years ago. That means Elsa has been battling MS for most of Fernando's conscious life. He has grown up watching his mother fight a progressive neurological disease every single day. And the way he talks about her reveals the depth of that influence. "Resilience comes from my mom," Fernando told Eisen. "My mom struggles with multiple sclerosis, also known as MS, and I see her fighting every single day and with a smile on her face. So there's no excuse for me to have a bad day, bad play, or bad game. I'm always trying to have an optimistic approach, give the best, serve the best I can to my teammates." At the Heisman Trophy ceremony in December, a ceremony that was itself a historic moment, the first Heisman ever awarded to an Indiana player, Mendoza turned to his mother and delivered words that made millions of viewers emotional. "Mommy, this is your trophy as much as it is mine," he told her. "You've always been my biggest fan. You're my light. You're my why." Fernando made history as one of just 3 Hispanic players who have won the Heisman Trophy. The quarterback was born in Miami, but his grandparents are originally from Cuba. The family's heritage, resilience, and togetherness weren't merely biographical footnotes. They were the core of everything Mendoza represented as a player and as a prospect. So when the NFL draft approached, Fernando made a calculation that prioritized his family above the spectacle. Mendoza said that because he is staying at home, he will be able to have more people who helped him on his journey share the experience. "I wanted to stay and make the memory with everybody who poured into my football journey," Mendoza said. "Mentors, coaches, family, friends, we want to share that memory with all of them. Is going to be the best memory that I could make, rather than limit it to 10 or 12 people in Pittsburgh." The NFL, however, was not thrilled. Desperately wanting Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza in attendance during the first round of Thursday night's 2026 NFL Draft, league officials sought Peyton Manning's help to make it happen. However, not even a Hall of Fame quarterback could convince the projected #1 overall pick to rearrange travel plans. Manning confirmed the league reached out to maybe encourage Mendoza to go to the draft, per the Denver Gazette. Think about that for a moment. The NFL reached into its deepest Rolodex, pulled out one of the most influential and revered quarterbacks in the history of the sport, and deployed him as a messenger to a 22-year-old kid from Miami. And the kid still said no. It seems as though league leadership did everything they could to convince Mendoza to go to Pittsburgh, but the quarterback stood firm in his decision to share this moment with those he loved most. The last time a presumptive top pick chose not to attend the draft was in 2021, when Trevor Lawrence opted to be around friends and family in Georgia rather than travel to Cleveland. But even Lawrence's decision didn't carry the same emotional weight. Mendoza's reasoning was layered: travel logistics for a wheelchair-bound parent, the desire to celebrate with a wider circle of loved ones, and the simple grounding truth that his mother's comfort mattered more to him than a handshake on a stage. "I stayed at home because of a family decision. We did a lot of travel this year. My mother wanted to stay home. We always joke that it's her party, not really mine. And I thought it would be the best decision to have everybody there, the village that's poured into me to get to this point of success, to have them there." Mendoza's mother has multiple sclerosis. The degenerative nerve disease confined Elsa Mendoza to a wheelchair. But Mendoza's decision to stay home, as noble and personal as it was, is precisely what created the conditions for the footage controversy. Because when the number one pick isn't at the venue, the networks have to send their cameras to the pick. And when two networks send cameras to the same living room, and one of those cameras is rolling before the other, things get complicated. Let's go back to draft night and slow things down. The Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock. Everyone in the football universe knows the pick. Mendoza was unanimously expected to be the first pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. And instead of attending the draft in person in Pittsburgh, the Heisman Trophy and national championship winner was home with his family in Coral Gables, FL. Multiple camera crews set up inside the Mendoza family residence in South Florida to capture interviews and to film his reaction to the life-changing phone call from the Raiders organization. Both ESPN and NFL Network were on hand, but it might have been the same camera crew for both networks. This is a crucial detail. The worldwide leader in sports finalized a landmark partnership with the National Football League at the beginning of February to acquire ownership of NFL Network, NFL Red Zone, and other media assets. The NFL received a 10% equity stake in ESPN. They are now, to an extent, one and the same. The NFL Draft was broadcast live on ESPN, ABC, and NFL Network. All three channels aired simultaneous coverage with their own unique flavor. The personalities were different, the analysis was different, etc. But the footage from Mendoza's living room that created an entirely different kind of conflict. When the pick was officially announced by Roger Goodell on stage in Pittsburgh, both ESPN and NFL Network cut to the Mendoza residence. ESPN and NFL Network showed two completely different reactions when Fernando Mendoza was drafted. Both of those videos aired at the exact same time. ESPN on top, NFL Network on bottom. On ESPN, viewers saw Mendoza wearing a Raiders hat, jumping up, hugging his mother, then working his way around the room in celebration, no phone in his hand. On NFL Network, viewers saw Mendoza without a hat, phone still in hand, hugging family members in a noticeably different sequence. Same room, same people, same furniture, same lighting, completely different footage, airing at the exact same time. The internet fractured into approximately 1,000 theories within seconds. Some NFL fans were convinced that the camera crews had Mendoza and his family fake their reactions to the pick during a pre-recorded segment, twice, to air live on the two different broadcasts. Think about the accusation being leveled here. Fans were suggesting that the NFL, or ESPN, or both, had Mendoza and his entire family, his wheelchair-bound mother included, rehearse and perform their emotional reactions to the biggest moment of his life. Not once, but twice, so that two different networks could air two different versions of the same supposedly spontaneous celebration. The idea was wild, but the visual evidence was undeniable. Anyone who watched the side-by-side comparison could see the inconsistencies. Hat versus no hat, phone versus no phone, different hug sequences, two clips that were clearly recorded at different times, aired as though they were the same live moment. If you were watching to see how ESPN and NFL Network covered the drafting of Fernando Mendoza by the Las Vegas Raiders with the top overall selection, you may have thought you were seeing an optical illusion. And then the footage from Indiana dropped. Thankfully, we don't have to necessarily study the footage like it's the Zapruder film to solve the mystery. Thanks to a tweet from Mendoza's former school, the Indiana Hoosiers put out a tweet featuring footage from In the Room of Fernando Mendoza getting the call from the Las Vegas Raiders about his selection. He then circles the room sans hat, as in the NFL Network version of the pick. There it was. The Indiana Hoosiers' own cameras had captured a third angle of the moment, and this third angle corroborated a very specific timeline. Here's what actually happened, and it's far less sinister than the conspiracist imagined, but no less interesting. Draft night unfolds in stages. Before the commissioner walks to the podium, before the crowd reacts, before the television lights hit, the team calls the player. This is the real moment of truth. The phone rings. The general manager or head coach tells you you're their pick. Then there's a gap, sometimes several minutes, before the commissioner makes the official announcement. As it would turn out, the NFL Network did not show the live moment. ESPN did. ESPN showed the Mendoza family react to his name being announced by Roger Goodell in Pittsburgh. NFL Network aired the previously recorded reaction to the phone call from the Raiders. That's it. That's the explanation. The NFL Network clip showed the genuine first reaction moment. Mendoza answering the phone, learning he was a Raider, leaping up without a hat. Because why would he have a Raiders hat on before the call? Phone still in hand, hugging everyone in sight. It would then stand to reason that the ESPN video was a live shot of the official announcement from the commissioner when he could put the hat on and officially become a member of the Raiders. The ESPN clip likely captured the moment when Mendoza officially put on the Raiders hat, following the commissioner's announcement. This reflects a common practice during drafts, where players transition from their homes to officially don their new team's gear. Two real moments. Two real reactions. Neither faked, neither staged, just captured at different points in the same sequence and aired simultaneously by two networks that made different editorial choices about which moment to broadcast. While the 2026 NFL Draft may not have been filled with unexpected drama, the unique presentation of Mendoza's moment led to an engaging discussion among fans. But the footage controversy wasn't the only fire burning around Mendoza's name, leading into and throughout draft week. And while none of them qualify as heated backstage footage in the traditional sense, they created an environment where every piece of Mendoza content was being scrutinized with unusual intensity. First, there was the pre-draft social media storm. In the weeks prior to the draft, an alleged old social media comment by Mendoza went viral, with him facing criticism over the words he left on a post about George Floyd, who was killed by a police officer in 2020. Back then, LeBron James had shared an image during the protests. The post showed a police officer kneeling on a man, next to a photo of Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem. The caption read, "This is why." At the time, Fernando Mendoza was a high school student. Just weeks before the 2026 NFL Draft, the situation sparked debate among fans. While some people were criticizing what he said as a teenager, many others were defending him and asking people to look at the full context and his age at the time. A large number of people pointed out that he was only 16 years old when he made that comment. The discourse was intense and polarizing, but ultimately it did not affect his draft stock. He went first overall as everyone expected. Then there was the ESPN-driven narrative that attempted to elevate another quarterback above him. Not everybody thought the Indiana Hoosiers star should be the top pick. In fact, not everyone believed that Mendoza was even the top quarterback available in the draft. Instead, according to ESPN's Dan Orlovsky, both he and a number of NFL general managers believed that honor belonged to Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. Simpson, who is the consensus number 2 quarterback in the draft, spent much of the early 2025 college football season as the leader to go number 1 overall, before a difficult second half saw him plummet down the ratings. Fans accused Orlovsky and ESPN of having a conflict of interest. But did Orlovsky and ESPN as a whole have an ulterior motive for pushing Simpson over Mendoza? The accusation was rooted in the fact that Orlovsky is represented by the talent agency CAA, which also represents Simpson. I would just say I'm not nearly important enough to CAA financially for them to pay me to say something about a guy who might be the 20th pick in the draft, Orlovsky said. I don't make enough money for them to pay me money to say that. So heading into draft night, Mendoza was already operating in a cloud of controversy. Old social media comments resurfacing, accusations of media bias, and the lingering tension of his decision to skip the draft against the NFL's wishes. Every camera pointed at him was capturing a young man who had been under an unusual amount of fire for a presumptive number 1 pick. And then, after all of that, the two networks aired footage that didn't match. Of course, fans went to a dark place. The atmosphere was already primed for suspicion, but what happened after the draft told a completely different story about Mendoza's temperament and state of mind. Fernando Mendoza is already hyping up fans just one day into his career as a quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. Mendoza could be seen shouting Raiders minority owner Tom Brady's signature catchphrase, "Let's effing go," in a video shared Friday by Raiders broadcaster Harry Ruiz. That video, which went viral in its own right, showed a Mendoza who was anything but troubled. He was fired up, animated, channeling the energy of a man who had just achieved a childhood dream and was ready to charge into the next chapter. 7-time Super Bowl champion, ex-NFL quarterback, and Las Vegas Raiders minority owner Tom Brady offered his congratulations on social media to all the new rookies. soon after the NFL draft began Thursday. He also gave a special shout-out to the Silver and Black's new signal caller, Fernando Mendoza, who went first overall. The quarterback held his first Raiders press conference Friday at the team's headquarters in Henderson. Mendoza said during his press conference that he'd received texts from teammates, including veteran quarterback Kirk Cousins. "Kirk sent me a really nice text. Looking forward to working with him. Learning anything I can from him," Mendoza said. Meanwhile, the brand deals were already materializing. Building on its partnership with Fernando Mendoza, LinkedIn released a new spot timed to the NFL draft, capturing that transition in the moment. LinkedIn released a new NFL draft ad featuring quarterback Fernando Mendoza, centered on a real-time LinkedIn profile update. Mendoza announced on LinkedIn he was open to work earlier this year. The nerd who announced his job search on LinkedIn was now the face of the Las Vegas Raiders. Hours before the 2026 NFL Draft, Fernando Mendoza set social media on fire with an Instagram post showing off a sleek black and silver Hugo Boss suit, colors that just happened to mirror the Las Vegas Raiders' identity. At the time, it felt like a wink at what everyone already suspected. Then the Raiders made it official as Mendoza went number 1 overall. But then came the real reveal, the outfit change that, in retrospect, embodies everything about Mendoza's personality. After posting the sharp Hugo Boss suit photo, when the cameras actually captured his reaction at home, he had changed into something far more casual. Fans couldn't stop laughing about it. One user wrote, "Mendoza doing this interview in a Rose Bowl polo he got for free is killing me." Another joked, "Is he being drafted or reporting for ESPN?" This is the man who was supposed to be at the center of heated backstage footage. A man who skipped the biggest stage in football to sit in his mother's living room. A man who wore a free polo on the most important night of his professional life. A man who said no to the NFL itself and stood his ground. So here's the truth of it all. The leaked footage was 2 television networks airing 2 different chronological moments. From the same celebration as though they were happening simultaneously, the NFL network did not show the live moment. ESPN did. ESPN showed the Mendoza family react to his name being announced by Roger Goodell in Pittsburgh. NFL Network aired the previously recorded reaction to the phone call from the Raiders. There was no conspiracy. There was no fake reaction. There was no heated confrontation backstage. There was a young man from Miami, surrounded by everyone who ever mattered to him, reacting twice to the same life-altering news. Once when the Raiders called him, and once when the commissioner said his name. Because that's how the draft works when you're watching from home. He is a self-embraced nerd, a conscientious thinker, a joyous competitor, and an articulate business graduate who steers and inspires by example both on and off the field. Now primed to be the new face of the Las Vegas Raiders, he now becomes the 5th Heisman Trophy winner to be drafted by the Raiders organization, joining Marcus Allen, 1982, Bo Jackson, 1987, Tim Brown, 1988, and Charles Woodson, 1998. It's a new era in town with former Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak running the show as head coach and Mendoza the heir apparent at QB1. The Raiders did sign veteran Kirk Cousins and gave him $20 million guaranteed, and one can guess he might be running the show to start until Mendoza is ready to go. Mendoza plays with accuracy and anticipation. He's a precise player, not an explosive one. Still, there are plenty of doubts about him in a quarterback-thin draft class. But that has been the pattern with this quarterback his entire life. Doubted at every turn. Ranked 134th at his position coming out of high school. Transferred from Cal with no fanfare. Won a national championship and a Heisman Trophy in a single season. Went first overall, skipped the stage to sit with his mom. And then, because 2 cameras captured 2 real moments, and 2 networks made 2 different editorial decisions, the internet declared war on the authenticity of his celebration. The footage wasn't heated. The footage wasn't scandalous. The footage was 2 versions of a son reacting to the best news of his life, while his mother, the woman who fights MS every single day and still smiles, sat in the same room. Fernando Mendoza, rightly or wrongly, may not garner the same buzz as fellow number 1 pick quarterbacks amid a polarizing year for his position's class. But here comes a born leader with undeniable talent. For for whom it is remarkably easy to root. The rest is up to him.